Hello and welcome to Chronological Clone Wars, presented by the Podawakens, part of Logjam Media Podcast Network. My name is Jordan, and with me, as always, on this Chronological Clone Wars is Logan. How are you today, Logan?
Jordan, I woke up and I've landed on Hoth. It was 38 degrees in Florida. I don't know what's going on there, but I
Wow.
know it's probably colder up there because I
Yes,
know
way
that.
colder up here,
I know the game yesterday, the Ravens game it looked frosty.
yeah.
But how you feeling, Jordan? You probably had a good day yesterday.
Yeah, I did. Well, a terrible first half. I was
Yeah,
shaking in my boots, and then the second half was great. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, that was great. Now we're looking forward to the games later today. Once I'm all done my podcasts for the day.
Yeah, all 12 of them. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So
good stuff.
all right. Well, we are of course going through Clone Wars each week with talking about 3 episodes this week, and occasionally 4 episodes, occasionally 2 episodes, but this week is 3 as we're talking about the Ryloth arc. And in this Ryloth arc here, we have 3 episodes: Storm over Ryloth, Innocence of Ryloth, and Liberty on Ryloth. Storm over Ryloth is the first one we'll start with. That was directed by Brian Kalen O'Connell, written by George Kerstick, Scott Murphy, and Henry Gilroy, and premiered February 27th, 2009 on Cartoon Network. Before we dive into that one specifically, though, just if you wanted to kind of give your first thoughts here before we dive deep into the Ryloth arc here.
Yeah, I like this one. I think it's pretty. I would say that it conveys a lot of different messages that you get when, like, we are in war in human life, and here on Earth, um, especially as we get towards the end of the arc itself. But um, I'm always interested when the Twilight appear in episodes, just because I think it's a group of people that we don't really get a ton about in some of the movies. So anytime that a species shows up that we get more of a, because we get Gungan, like we get a little bit of a look into what their life is like in Phantom. But I feel like the Twi'lek are an interesting group, and one that we really get a lot of going forward in the story arcs that are outside of the movies. So I don't know. This is a nice little progression, and I think we get a lot of that with Clone Wars, right? We get a lot of the, here's what these people are like, here's what their home planet's like, here's what they really believe in, and we've gotten a lot of those arcs over the last couple of episodes that we've talked about. But I think this one was really focused on Twi'lek, and I love Twi'lek. So
Yeah, I mean, this one, I wasn't big on the first episode that we're about to dive into
yeah,
here, but I think
yeah,
the second one specifically is a really great episode. Um, okay, so I guess let's dive in to the Storm over Ryloth, which starts off here with Ryloth being taken over by separatists and a separatist leader named Wat Tambor. I think we've seen him a few times in this show so far, but obviously he's also in Attack of the Clones. Ahsoka is leading a fleet mission for like the very first time, and this is something that um, she kind of struggles with, right? Like she does not obey orders. She's very Anakin like here. She disobeys Anakin's orders, and it ends up losing her entire squadron, or most of her squadron. Anakin's disappointed in this. They lost a cruiser and a squadron, actually, and then Anakin is going to have to think of a new way uh, to fix this. So he does like this whole, what do you want to call it, like fake surrender, right? Where then they are kind of sending another spaceship into the blockade, trying to get, mainly, again, this is like, I don't know, our third blockade of the show so far, right? Where the separatists are being evil. They're blocking off food and supplies to the people on the planet below, and it comes to Anakin and Obi-Wan to kind of break this up, this time being Anakin. And then Obi-Wan and Mace Windu are going to arrive And of course, Anakin also gives Ahsoka more stuff to do after she lost her squadron. He kind of tells her to rebound, which I thought was interesting because Anakin is very disappointed at first with her, but he kind of really turns it around real quickly. He's like one of those football coaches, right? Where he's like Bill Belichick. He's like, we're on to Cincinnati, right? Like, we're on to the next mission right now, Logan. We're not going to harken back or keep looking back at the mission that just failed, even though we lost a lot of good clones during that. We have to kind of rebound. It's like Brett Favre after throwing 3 interceptions. He's like, I still gotta sling this ball around.
No, that's a good point. I do feel like Anakin leads by the way that he doesn't want to be led. You know what I mean? I feel like he looks at how he's being led and how he's portrayed, amongst the Jedi Council. I feel like Mace Windu doesn't trust him. Yoda's confidence is always kind of shaken by Anakin, but I think he knows how strong Anakin is. And then Obi-Wan treats him, he's kind of condescending towards Anakin, I think. And I think with all those mixed, because you have your master that's with you all the time, but then you have the Jedi Council that kind of sits over the master, and they always go to the Jedi Council, and they have that kind of roundtable discussion where they're talking about certain issues. And I feel like Anakin's always getting berated by the Jedi Council, and I feel like he sees that in himself when he starts to criticize things that Ahsoka does. Now, this one was very costly. Like, this might be the most costly that she's had so far, obviously, because
Definitely.
she loses most of her squadron. And once you do that, people lose faith in you as a commander too. So I think also the clones are kind of like, well, we're gonna be in charge, this person's going to lead us as a child. And we have a lot of references to that over the next couple of episodes, where the Jedi Council are quick to remind Anakin that she's just a kid, and that she's got a lot to learn, and boy does she. And we're really starting to see, I think Ahsoka, like, there's a big focus on Ahsoka in season 2 so far, or like leading up into season 2.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is still season 1.
Yeah, this is season 1. Yeah. We get to season 2 next. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, no, end of season 1 into season 2, I feel like we're getting a lot of Ahsoka making mistakes, Anakin trying to correct them, but it's the same mistakes Anakin would make, so he doesn't know how to, I think he sees it as kind of, he's treating her with respect because he also does the same thing, and he understands what the decisions that she's making, and he's trying to learn, but he also has his, which we haven't really seen yet as much in this.
Yeah, pretty interesting episode to kind of have this brand new character who is like the flagship character of this show go through such a big loss like this, but it kind of makes sense for being one of the last 3 or 4 episodes of the season, kind of like building that character before we kind of move on to the next season, where we're going to kind of really expand on more of this stuff. So I don't know, anything else about this first episode that we didn't really cover? I'm trying to like go through the notes here, but I think we covered this one pretty well, right? We good with this one?
Yeah, I think so. Anakin still is very deceptive in what he does with his escape pod, and how he, you see the cleverness behind Anakin. I think you're really starting to see his brilliance, his intelligence, his danger that leads him to the dark side.
Yeah, my only downside to that, I feel like, is that we don't get enough of that as him as Vader.
Yeah.
Like him, like Vader is not as.
He's kind of stupid. It's Vader.
I wouldn't even say stupid. I don't know. It's like, obviously, like George had some of this stuff outlined, but some of the stuff, like the twist of being his father and stuff, we're not really sure. I don't believe that was really planned right off the bat. So some of that stuff makes sense then, right? Like you're so he's probably, making that killer first movie and just thinking, how can I make this the best movie I can in case I don't get a sequel? And I don't think there's anything in there that really screams like Vader is a cunning mastermind and strategist the way that Anakin is. And I think you can explain away it story-wise too, of just Anakin as Vader is somebody totally different because of his failures. He was that cocky guy, and it led him to losing all of his limbs pretty much. So I do think that maybe that's part of it, is you can kind of excuse it away with that. But I just kind of wish we got to see Vader be more that way in the films too. I don't remember when he shows up in some of these shows, because he will show up in Rebels. I don't remember how much screen time he got there and how much of a strategist he was in those, but kind of wish we got to see more of that with him.
I feel like going forward after he loses his limbs, I feel like he rules more with anger, and
Yeah.
oftentimes ruling it with a temper will get in the way of intelligence, and craftiness. And also, it's so funny to me because of how little Obi-Wan and them trust him, and then it ends up being the exact same way with Palpatine. Like you go, and that's why I
Mm-hmm.
think you're right. I don't think at the beginning it was going to be where Vader was this mastermind, where he was Anakin and Luke's father. I think it ended up just being he was going to be this kind of right hand man to Palpatine, and it ended up being people just followed Vader more. So I don't know. It's like yeah. I think it is strange. I think it'd be fun to kind of do that, where it's just talking to people on their beliefs of how you think Darth got started.
Yeah, because I'm sure there's some people that think it was sketched out right away. I mean, George has kind of been very, I'd say, wishy-washy on all of that when you look back at some of the stuff he said. Originally he had a 9-movie plan. He had to cut it. Originally A New Hope was actually 3 movies squashed into one or whatever. It was. It's kind of lots of background about it out there, but it's fairly inconsistent, I will say, when I'm looking into that stuff. Let's go to the second episode, which is Innocence of Ryloth, which was directed by Justin Ridge and written by Randy Stradley and Henry Gilroy. As Henry Gilroy had a hand in all 3 of these. This aired March 6, 2009, 15 years ago. So this one was The Innocence of Ryloth. This is probably the best one of the arc for me, honestly. I think this one was great. We kind of pick up where we left off with Obi-Wan and Mace arriving, and they're heading down to the surface. And they're having trouble getting down there in their gunships. They're losing some, Obi-Wan's going down there with the clones and the gunships. They're losing some gunships while Mace is behind in one of the other ships. And Obi-Wan and his crew, like Commander Cody, have to, they land and they have to try to scout ahead. And he sends Cody to scout ahead. And then it's kind of like Obi-Wan's kind of doing his own thing for a little bit while Cody and crew are walking through this abandoned city on Ryloth here, which I thought was a really cool visual. And then they do find the survivors being held hostage. Now, when they go back to tell Obi-Wan all of this, they don't realize that there is an Imperial probe droid, not an Imperial probe droid, a Separatist probe droid, who is listening in and overhearing their plan. But the real heart of this episode, I feel like, are the 2 clones that are going to find the little girl, Twi'lek, who they can't communicate with because there's a language barrier. And during this time, they end up kind of forming a bond with this, young girl who they can't communicate with. And I think that's very cool to see that, because it's really I don't know how to say this, I guess. It's really a good message to know that even if you do not speak the same language, you are able to, work together and have a bond. And this really touching moment in the episode near the end here, where the little girl is just saying, I keeps calling them a certain name, which was Nara, and it means Obi-Wan translates this to mean brother. So Waxer and Boyle, who are the two clones, then um, are able to sit back and learn that. So that was really a touching moment at the end.
Yeah, this is one of those things. Like what I was alluding to before is you see this a lot, especially nowadays, because we do have the conflict going on in the Middle East, or any kind of war zone where uh, I guess like a city or a town or village has been taken over, and they're being held hostage by typically the terrorist group or the ruling, um, I guess the ruling group that kind of oversees the country or has taken the country, and kind of colonized it for themselves. Is that you see this cool connection between, like, troops that show up, and you see a lot of this with just good stories from the United States when they would show up, especially after 9/11, when they'd show up to these Middle Eastern villages and take back over control of a certain territory that was once theirs, but it was just, it's just completely destroyed, and there's children left, and that's all that's left, because they oftentimes there's some kind of, I guess, truce between some of these groups where they leave children alone for the most part, and they'll take the parents for hostage or prisoners of war or something like that. So no, it was a good moment, and then I love that Nara she just kept saying Nara, Nara, and you're like, what does that mean? Who is she looking for? And that's what I was thinking the whole time. Like, she's looking for somebody, like a sibling or a mother, and it wasn't. It was that these people came in, they were protecting her like they were her brothers.
Wouldn't it be messed up if she still was, like, she was saying Nara's her brother?
Yeah, it would be like, dude,
like,
no.
I'm missing my brother Nara. Where is he? And they're all like, "Oh, you're calling me brother. That's so nice of you."
These clones are the most conceited people I've ever met in my life.
Like, you see them walking away smiling, and then you just see, like, the body of Nara just lying underneath rubble or whatever.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I was waiting kind of for like her to be a trap. I don't know why. I just felt like I was just kind of like, wait, I don't know. I've seen some pretty dark shows where like this kid is told to go lead them into a trap, where they, walk them into a mine or something stupid. Like, gosh, but no, this was one of the most touching episodes too. It had a totally different take on it. Like, it felt very Last of Us, or kind of these apocalyptic shows where somebody comes in to save the day and they're the heroes, because there's just kids left and they're scared. Can't speak the language, don't know what's going on. The fact that she was able to put so much trust in these clones. But she also ends up being one of those kids, kind of like Anakin, that grows up to destroy the whole fleet. She's like, how dare these? I hate people. They just destroy everything. Kind of Thanos.
There is a sadness to this, Logan, that in 3 years, right, when the Clone Wars is over, and the clone troopers become stormtroopers, and they start doing more evil things, there is a sadness to this. This is a great moment for her, and she might trust some of these when she shouldn't at a later time, and then end up, dying because of that, or now, not all clone troopers become stormtroopers. They start getting phased out at a certain point and just hire regular people, which is why they suck at shooting. But it's, it is sad to think that, like, this great experience she had with them where she's calling him brother might, looking back at it for her, this might get stained, right? When you find out, when they become an empire.
Yeah.
And kind of the dark undertones of this episode, I guess, even though most people are not thinking about that, it's in the back of my mind every time we watch a Clone Wars episode that, like, sometimes these people that are, like, in one of these other ones next week, when Anakin is saving babies of the Force, I'm like, well, bud, you're going to be slaughtering a bunch of them in like 2 years, all right? So it's always underlying in the back of my head for this, and sometimes it makes it tough to, like, understand some of this, but it just kind of is what it is,
especially because, like, Anakin, they could have done a better job with his story, because I feel like Anakin's storyline, the only reason he goes Sith is because he just gets angry. Like that's the basis in behind why he switches sides because he gets pissed off. Like I'm angry at the world, and it, and and they kind of again it goes back to that trust idea, right? But it's like a rebel teenager that gets mad. It's the same thing with Kylo. Like they get mad, they're angry, which I get. Like it's part of being angry leads to hatred, hatred, that whole thing. But it's like I don't know. It is weird every time you're right. Every time we watch the episode, and every time I watch the episodes, I'm not gonna lie, I see the clone. I see the clones, and like they turn into stormtroopers. Like not all of them are going to be obviously because they kind of phase them out, but some of these clones end up being stormtroopers, and it's like
at the very least, yeah. I mean, at
yeah.
the very least, they do Order 66 and stuff,
right?
So like
So it's
that's
hard
always
to
in the back here. When you see like what Ahsoka and Anakin are bonding with these clones and stuff at times, you're like, oh dang, right? Like we kind of got
makes more sense.
We kind of had a moment that kind of mirrored Episode 3 when Obi-Wan lost his lightsaber at some point, and then Cody gives it back to him. That happens exactly the same in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting. Okay, so let's talk about Liberty on Ryloth, which was directed by Rob Coleman and written by Henry Gilroy and premiered March 13th, 2009. So this is, the Battle of Ryloth continuing to go on here. Wat Tambor still having control, but his forces are starting to maybe gain a bit of an upper hand here, but Mace Windu then has to try to convince Twi'lek freedom fighter Sham Syndulla, who we've met in an episode earlier this season. And as I said, I'll put a little spoiler tag on this right now. His daughter is going to be a very important character going forward. We don't see her in this show, but it's just something to note. And he's trying to convince Sham Syndulla to help him save the capital city from the droid's destructions. Now, Sham is hesitant to aid Mace for quite some time, but then he realizes that the Jedi can be trusted and joins with him to liberate the city and ultimately the planet in a climactic battle. That quote is from Wikipedia. Just when people think I just came up with that off the top of my head. But what about this episode here? This one was kind of a Mace one, and we kind of continue this trend where the three-parters are starting to kind of have their own feel to them. The first one very focused on Anakin and Ahsoka. The second one more focused on Obi-Wan and his clones, while this one kind of more focused on Mace Windu, which is, I think, a good way to do it, where the episodes don't feel repetitive. But all in all, this is kind of our finale to season 1 here as we start going into season 2. What was kind of your thoughts with this makeshift finale, as we'll call it?
I'll tell you what, man. I don't think I'd ever trust Mace Windu to do any negotiations. He gets so angry. Like I don't understand Mace Windu's tactics of negotiation. Now he can be pretty good at times. I think it's why Sham they've kind of tasked him to do it because he does. It's Mace's convincing, but he does it in a very Samuel L. Jackson way. If they allowed cussing, there would be a lot of anger, I think. But I love Mace Windu. Always have, always will. I hope at some point we find out. I don't know if we've ever found this out. If he's actually dead, we just assume he's dead. We think Palpatine just offed him, but him along with Kit and all of the rest of them. But yeah, I like Mace's episodes. I do like that the character arcs are taking place more so now. Like we're getting 3 episodes of each character or each group of people. And this was a Mace heavy couple of weeks that we have. So yeah, I enjoyed it, but to liberty or give me death, I guess. Mace dies. Spoiler.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting episode here. Mace Windu, like you said, is it is one of those things where I think sometimes they go a little overboard with Mace, because I do like Mace Windu. I do think he's had a bit of like a bad rap, right?
Yeah.
But I can see why when sometimes you get him in some of these episodes and he's just always, how is nobody concerned about Mace is kind of what I wonder, right? Like if he is always so confrontational about the way he runs stuff,
Always.
it
Yeah.
makes me wonder, like, how is nobody else in the Jedi Council like, dude, maybe you gotta like pull back a little bit, because this is part of the reason why Anakin is going to freak out. I know people say, well, he shouldn't have freaked out. Yeah, obviously, right? But when you look at it a certain way, you look at Anakin and you say, we've kind of talked about it a lot, but with the, you'll be on the council but not granted the rank of master. That felt like a Mace thing, right? And he's the one that says it. Um, and it's like at that point, Anakin was already going down the wrong path. But if you look even back at Episode 1, how he doesn't really trust Qui-Gon's judgment on the kid, and in Episode 2, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but he is very. I think Episode 2, he's probably the most nice he is to anybody in that one. And then Episode 3, of course, he's very antagonistic to him. And I know some people will say, look, he is vindicated at the end of this because of how Anakin turns to the dark side. But I think there's ways that they could have kind of nurtured Anakin where he wouldn't have turned to the dark side. The biggest thing would have been when obviously, if Qui-Gon would have survived. I think if Qui-Gon survives, Anakin doesn't turn to the dark side. This is kind of talked about by Dave Filoni in this really great clip in the behind the scenes of the Mandalorian stuff. He's talking about the duel of the fates at the end of Episode 1. He said it's the duel of the fates for these characters, not just Qui-Gon, but for Anakin, because if you have Qui-Gon alive, it's dueling over Anakin's fate. The fact that that Qui-Gon dies in the duel of the fates at the end of Episode 1 kind of resigns Anakin to his fate of turning to the dark side, because Qui-Gon is somebody that would have nurtured him correctly. He always questioned the council. When Anakin questions the council, Obi-Wan always kind of says, hey, it's the council, we got to do what they say. Qui-Gon was like a maverick, he was somebody that will question them and kind of do his own thing, to the point where Obi-Wan's like, Master, you're kind of pushing your luck here. But I think Qui-Gon would have taught him the right way, and he was like a father figure to Anakin for saving him from the slavery and stuff. So just interesting to think about as we kind of look to some of these episodes and look through some of these characters' portrayals. I think sometimes they kind of go overboard in Mace's portrayal of intent. But yeah, I mean, it's why I think some people do hate him as a character. People will be like, oh, it's all Mace's fault. And it's not, obviously. But it's like sometimes episodes like this where Mace is a little intense and, not a great negotiator with Cham Syndulla at times is part of the reason why I think it kind of makes people think that at certain times.
I think you make a good point, but there's something about Liam Neeson that's just so nurturing.
Yeah.
but I think too, like what you said, Obi-Wan's young when becomes the master of Anakin.
Very young.
Yeah. So it's essentially like right now Anakin exactly the same with Ahsoka. Like they're even younger. Like Anakin was younger than Ahsoka. So like it has that feel to it where, a young guy's given too much of an opportunity. It's too great for him. Stage is too big. Lights are too bright, kind of thing. Because Qui-Gon, like you said, Qui-Gon was so nurturing and had experience, and Qui-Gon never made it feel like it was the end of the world. You know what I mean? Whereas Obi-Wan makes it sometimes feel like, oh my gosh, Anakin, you just ended the Republic, like you just ruined it, and it really isn't that. And I think Obi-Wan's just, he was young, so the Jedi Council was going to get away with him and whatever they said.
All right. Anything else about these episodes of season 1 before we move on to the next one?
No, I mean, the one thing I am finding out, like you said, I think that Mace Windu's starting to lose a little bit for me. I really liked him in the movies until episode 3, but as you know, I don't know, he just doesn't seem like the character I thought he was. So he just rules with kind of this iron fist, and maybe it's jealousy. I don't know. Maybe it's something else, but he doesn't.
Like you're jealous of him, or he's jealous of Anakin?
Both. He's got a purple lightsaber. I would never have a purple lightsaber. I'd have something boring like blue.
Yeah, purple's the way, man. Purple is the color this week.
I like Ray's yellow, though.
Yes, yeah. All right, well, we'll wrap up our Season 1 coverage. Yes, there is a Season 1 episode, the finale, later on in the show's chronological timeline. But we're going to, of course, move on to Season 2 next week. So, next week, what everyone should be watching is Holocron Heist, Cargo of Doom, and Children of the Force. These are the first 3 episodes of Season 2. So Season 2, Episode 1, 2, and 3 are what we're watching. And then the week after that gets a little messy with where we go, and it'll be a 4-episode week that week. So everybody prepare yourself for that. But this week, upcoming, we have 3 episodes. Holocron Heist, Cargo of Doom, Children of the Force. So I guess I know we watched some Season 3 and stuff in this, but just overall Season 1 thoughts, Logan. How a good start to the show, or what are you looking forward to in Season 2?
A good start, and from everything I've read and kind of looked at IMDb, like it only gets better from here. I thought there were, as any show when it first got started, it's like, oh, okay, like it's good, but no, I mean this is so good. Like I'm so glad that I watched, or that we've decided to restart. You rewatching it, me watching it for the first time. I have thoroughly enjoyed the show. I know why now it is such a popular show, especially for the generation just right below us, because this is what they grew up with as far as their Star Wars are concerned. And this is a great introduction into that. And I feel like even just if they launched watching this and then went back to watch Phantom, like I feel like it still does a nice job of where you wouldn't feel totally lost. I feel like you'd be like, okay, so like I get where we are, and I get where they came from now if I've gone back and rewatched this. So yeah, I'm going to give it the first season an 8 out of 10. There's a couple episodes that's like, okay. But
yeah, well,
overall,
that's good.
Yeah, overall, a pretty good start.
Yeah, it only gets better from here. All right, so we will wrap it up here. I hope everyone has a great rest of their week. We will catch you next week when we talk, again, Season 2. We're skipping the finale of Season 1. Season 2, Episodes 1, 2, and 3. You can follow us at podawakens on all of the social channels if you want to send us your feedback or what your thoughts were on our Season 1 watch here of the Clone Wars. Have a great rest of your week. We'll catch you next time.